Good morning and welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I'm Holly Magnuson and I am here with Shawn Kohrman. Good morning, Shawn.
Morning, Holly. How are you today?
I'm doing much better, thank you. Happy 2017 to you.
Likewise. I think we're both still coming off a cold from the sounds of it.
Yeah, but fortunately getting better, and I'm grateful for that. So
absolutely.
And I've got too much noise here. So we'll get started with your predictions for 2017. But before that, I forgot to ask you, did you pay attention to how many of your predictions from 2016 did come true in 2017?
Sadly, a high number of them. Like we covered, in my line of work, it's not exactly something you want to be right about.
No, we don't want you to be right, but I was curious to you kind of your percentage of rights. I know we talked about that in December, but I forgot to keep tally of how many.
If I had to think back and guess, I'd say I was right about probably 70-80% of the time.
Yeah,
so I give myself a B minus maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, I think you're correct. So
there were a couple that didn't. I don't think they evolved the way we thought they would. Which was actually a good thing.
Yes, it was very good.
But there's one that was on my list last year that you'll see on this year's list again.
Well, let's get started. As a reminder, if you, as you're watching this, if you have a question, you should see the chat window next to our faces over on the right-hand side. You can ask us a question. If you're watching this after the fact and you have a question, you can email Shawn and I at iso@apu.edu, and one of us will get an answer and get back to you as quickly as we can.
Excellent.
So it's all yours, Shawn.
All righty. So as we look into our annual crystal ball, as has become a tradition here, as I do every year, one of the things I do towards the end of the year and the beginning of the year is I take a look at the security researchers, security news, various security reports out there that are compiled for that purpose to help people in my line of work get a handle on what may be coming down the line, what kinds of things we need to worry about, lose sleep over, and that kind of thing. And this year is going to be interesting. We've seen some data that already is pointing to some very disturbing trends. We've seen a couple of attacks in the last few months of 2016 and already one in January of this year. So hang on, folks, it's going to be a wild one. So first up on our order of business, ransomware. Ransomware is the idea that a software program will lock you out of your computer using either encryption or deletion or some other form, and then ransom your stuff back to you. You will have to pay a criminal, X number of dollars to get access back to your data or your programs or whatever. So while we're not expecting a dramatic increase in volume, we're still seeing a fairly consistent amount of volume predicted and a small increase. We are expecting a 25% increase in variance in the different kinds of ways that they can do this to you. So if nothing else, it's not going to be dull. Some examples of that: November, the San Francisco MTA got taken down and passengers got a free weekend of rides. While the software systems controlling the entire MTA infrastructure were compromised by an attacker. So, was that successful or not? Well, people got a free ride, and there's really no dollar estimate right now as to how much money the MTA lost as a result of that outage. There was a local university here in California that was recently compromised, and they put out $28,000 because that was considered the best way by the security experts that they brought in to get access to their systems back and mitigate the damage. And that piece of ransomware crawled throughout their systems. We still don't have all the details on that breach yet, but we know it was ransomware. We know they did pay the ransom. It wasn't a small dollar figure, but it's still going to take them weeks to recover from that. And pardon me. So, as these attacks continue, and it's something to bear in mind.
Shawn, do they know how the ransomware got on campus to start with?
It's too early to tell. Too early to tell. What we know are the most common vectors for spreading ransomware. There are two. The most common is email. Someone downloads or opens an email with an attachment of some sort. They open the attachment, and if they don't have current antivirus or it's a new variant, that program cuts loose and gets onto the systems and then the network, depending on what level of privilege that person may have on the network. So you'll remember a couple of years ago, we got hit here by a ransomware attack that we were able to successfully mitigate very quickly. Even so, it did take several departments down for about 3 hours while we did a full restore of the affected areas. So, for ransomware, one of the best recovery methods is having good backups. And the team here in IMT Engineering, they do a fantastic job of doing regular backups, testing them, verifying them, and making sure that they're going all the time, every time. So that's a great recovery strategy. What's more important is a prevention strategy. Look at the email. Does it make sense that you're going to be getting this kind of attachment from this person? What is the language? Why are they sending this to you? Does it look funky? Several months ago, we did a demonstration of a simple piece of malware that I put onto one of my virtual machines and demonstrated how simple it was, what the social hooks were that really got people to fall for the trap, and how well designed it was.
I was going to say, and we'll include a link to that demonstration that you did in the show notes, because it was just fascinating to see it work.
It was so simple. I mean, it just poof, 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 done. And that system was encrypted. So, that's why we worry about ransomware. A big concern about the 25% increase in variance. There's always a lag between when a new virus or Trojan or piece of malware comes out and when the antivirus companies can detect it. It's a cat and mouse game. But as Bruce Schneier said, attacks never get worse. They only get better. Okay? So the bad guys are always going to be a step ahead here. So the prevention, that common sense piece that really stops this in its tracks is the end user, the person sitting in front of the computer. Making that judgment call. Do I open this attachment? Do I send it off to support for analysis? Because we can, we had that email address that we talk about, spam@apu.edu. If you send an email to that address, one of either myself or someone at the support desk will review it to see if it's real, if it's fake, or if it's loaded with something.
Shawn, we do have a question that just came in regarding our backups and what's our process? How do we verify backups?
So backups are verified in a number of ways. Some of them are automated and some of them is done through testing. So you do test restores in some cases. So then but again, a lot of those procedures are done automatically within the software itself. They verify it real time. For our backup strategy, it's multi-tiered as well. So there's a variety of steps involved that provide redundancy to each other.
Thank you.
Did I answer that question?
I think so. I'm sure Richie will let us know if he has more questions. So thank you.
I'll be certainly happy to provide more detail offline. So again, going back to this, a 25% increase in variance. That's not volume, that's variance types, different kinds of malware, different types of ransomware out there. That's concerning to everyone, not just me. Because really the first line of defense there is going to be our end users. Every single one of you with an email address, that's the primary vector. That's primarily how this stuff gets in. So next up, I'm sure you've heard of the term Internet of Things by now. It's been in the news. It's had a lot of coverage. It's you have a smart refrigerator, you have a smart washer or dryer, you wear a Fitbit, any number of these small devices.
Oh, but wait, it gets even better. My new CPAP machine is wireless. It transmits how I'm doing in my breathing and sleeping at night to a server.
Yep.
Freaked me out. Still does, actually.
So I mean that's a great example. It's a smart device that's sending your data somewhere else. Now here's the thing. What if your CPAP machine is compromised and starts launching a DDoS on a government installation?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. Yeah,
that's the reality of it, though.
Oh, I know. I know enough that when I saw that, the Wi-Fi signal there, I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yep.
But when I went in for my checkup, they were able to already know how the machine was working for me.
Yeah. So, ironically, it's also things like wireless security cameras that people put up in their homes, baby monitors that are wireless enabled, so that you can monitor your baby remotely. There's anything that you can do wirelessly or remotely has a risk factor associated with it. These are generally low power devices. Think of even like smart TVs or an example here. If they can be compromised, what will happen is, even though they don't have a lot of horsepower, they don't have a lot of throughput, there's millions of them. So instead of me compromising a few big iron servers in some company, I'll write a piece of malware that goes and and infects 20,000 TVs. And then from that, I can have the same impact if I decide to launch an attack. Well, that's what we're seeing happening. As more and more and more of these Internet of Things, these low-powered but connected devices come onto the market, the trend we're seeing is, as unfortunately has been true for a very, very long time, security is an afterthought. They were not designed either with good security controls built in, or the ones that they have are so weak they're kind of pointless. They're built around the idea of functionality, of doing something cool, of doing something useful, of making our lives better in some way. But the idea that someone would maliciously use them, for a lot of the developers of these devices, was foreign, because they're looking at them saying, well, it has so little horsepower, it has so little computational power, what could they possibly do with it? Fair question. And it's not so much what I can do with one of them, what can I do with a few thousand of them or a million of them? So that's something else to be considered. We've already seen two of the largest attacks, dynamic denial of service attacks, DDoS. Two of the largest attacks ever recorded were sourced out of these type of devices. Routers, cameras, monitors, TVs, CPAP machines.
But sorry, Shawn, I'm not giving it up.
It
has really been helping, and so I'm a much better employee now. So I'm going to have to worry about that on outside of this.
Well, I had no complaints to begin with, so hey, I'll take it. So that's something else to be cognizant of that's coming down the line. The next up is also equally concerning, and this ties back to ransomware. The simplicity of business email compromise attacks will drive an increase in the volume of targeted scams in 2017. So targeted scams, also referred to as spear phishing, is where an attacker goes after a specific department or a specific person within a company to get information, credit card numbers, account lists, customer lists, all kinds of stuff. But they're going after a specific department or person within an organization with an intent to do some form of compromise. To do a comparison, I mean, we're looking at probably the expectation of maybe 40,000 ransomware attacks in the coming year, but well over 140,000 of these BEC attacks. And the payouts couldn't be night and day. I mean, the payouts for these business email compromise attacks are much more transparent. They're rarely reported because they don't have to be in many cases. But the cost is very real. So it's another thing that we're looking at specifically is how those types of compromises affect the financial industry. And those are, and when I say financial industry, it can all, we're talking about banks, we're talking about stock trading, but we're also talking about payment processors, which are used by pretty much every business out there in some way, shape, or form. So the idea is if the cyber criminal sends you an email, somebody opens the email, the payment info gets out, and now the crook is using that payment info to buy goods and services. Worse is when they embed themselves in an organization and are siphoning off funds for that same purpose. But the entry point is still the same. Somebody opened an email, somebody answered a phone call, somebody fell for something. And a lot of these, what we're seeing now is there's more focus on the social side of attacks and less emphasis on the actual hacking and cracking that we used to do from the outside. So our next up, and this may create some consternation.
They all do, Shawn. They all do.
Adobe and Apple will outpace Microsoft in terms of the number of platform vulnerability discoveries in 2017.
Okay, that was a tough one for me to swallow because Microsoft does a really good job in this territory.
So that's fair. You know, Microsoft has traditionally owned that. I'm going to actually flip to a screen share here for a minute so we can look at this. Just give me a second. Nope. Come on, Google. Can you still hear me?
I still hear you. I still see you.
Okay. I'm still waiting for my Hangouts to share the screen correctly.
We did also have a question from Richie again, as far as individuals developing, how would an individual develop a good practice for creating backups and verifying their backups? Oh, I'm sorry. He did say for personal computer. And I did, and tell him we could probably take that offline because we've talked about Crash Plan and
right.
Carbonite. Those are two of the really good ones in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts while you're waiting for your Hangouts to share properly?
So there's Crash Plan. There's a few others. I mean, you can always do Google backups and those kinds of things. Some people still back up to external hard drives, which isn't a bad thing. In the case of ransomware looks for those connected external devices because it knows there's backups there. And if it's consistently connected, it will encrypt it. So in the case of, I think it's Time Machine for Apple, you hook up an external hard drive to your Apple computer and it does backups on a very consistent basis. It's a great backup tool. The problem from a ransomware perspective is, a piece of ransomware will look for that and encrypt the whole thing. So finding these offline backups or cloud-based backups is actually a good thing.
Yeah, I use personally for my home machine, I use Crash Plan and it's worked great. I have it set up where everything on my external hard drive is automatically backed up.
Right.
And so even if that hard drive were to get encrypted, the backup would still be safe. It
And that's
takes
important.
it would take several days / weeks to restore everything, but I would still have everything.
Right. Yep. And that's exactly it. I mean, when you consider the amount of data that we're uploading, um, it's going to be significant if you ever have to do a restore, but at the same time, it's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got 2.5 terabytes that I've backed up to CrashPlan.
Okay. Holly, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties here. I'm going to have to drop off and come back in.
Okay.
Um,
In the meantime, I will address the other question because I think I can. So
okay.
I'll see you in just a moment. Be right back. Excuse me. And for those of you watching and you're interested as far as your university laptop or your university computer and making sure it is backed up, you've got a couple of options there. One is your network drive, your L drive or your M drive, and you also have Google Drive as a way to back up all of your information. We have unlimited storage space with Google Drive, and so that is also another method that you can use to just, and that's what I do with my laptops because I have multiple laptops. So I just, I copy everything over to Google Drive. And, the fact that we have the unlimited makes it really nice. If you need help with that process, please feel free to go ahead and contact the support desk, or you can contact me directly. We can make that happen. And I think Shawn is now back. Or is Shawn not back? Yes, the joy of technology. Sometimes it works magnificently, and other times it fails us miserably. But with our Ask the Security Guy, there's Shawn's back.
Yep. So I apologize. Apparently, screen share is having a bit of an issue on my computer today. So we're not going to do that.
Okay, so we will move on to our next prediction.
So the next one up is cyber propaganda, fake news, that kind of thing. We're seeing a sharp increase in that. Choose your news sources carefully, where you're receiving your input from, because we're seeing a high volume of stuff that is either thoroughly twisted or slightly twisted or somewhat believable or not believable. So again, verify your data sources. This is an interesting one. We're seeing a sharp increase in regulatory compliance for data security. So what that means for us is there's more and more legislation coming down that regulates not only what, but how we secure data. So that has an impact on productivity and also compliance. So that's something to think about more in a work context than in a personal context. Here at APU, that means that there are either an increase in regulations or there are more regulations coming that will dictate how we protect data and beyond what we may be doing already. The ones I've seen so far we're already well into compliance with, so it's just a matter of demonstrating that to the auditors. But again, that takes time and effort. But again, this is coming out of state and federal regulations. And then, and this is kind of a consistent one that ties to my worst feared category. They're just saying that threat actors are going to continue to find new and improved ways of launching attacks. No surprise there, but there's an increased emphasis on it because it's proving to be profitable. So the more they get, the more they want, the more they'll be innovative. And these are not people you want to be innovative. And then lastly, this is my worst fear and the one I worry about, that keeps me up at night, which is cyber terrorism. And that is the idea of infrastructure of core services being compromised and taken down by bad actors. The first example we saw of that was really emphatic in 2016 was the San Francisco MTA, where you have a public transportation system that was crippled through a cyber attack. The other thing that's considered is gas, water, power, these key infrastructure things. They're all driven by computer systems, by information systems. Well, if they're not protected well, they can be compromised. And then that has a ripple effect into our society. What happens if public transportation goes down? What happens if the freeway systems become gridlocked? What happens if you lose water or power for a 24 or 36, 72-hour period? And what do you do on an individual level to protect yourself and your family in the event of that happening? Because the threats are real, and we're starting to see, I would call them really tests to see if they can, rather than actual full-on cyber attacks in the form of cyber terrorism. But we know they're poking.
Yeah, I think about it because my cousin works for the electric company in one of the cities in Oklahoma, and they can, from their office, shut someone's electricity off.
Right.
My cousin's a sharp guy, but technology's not his thing. And a lot of these guys that are in that industry right now, I don't even want to think about what his password might be to go in. Because they're not getting trained. They're not getting educated on how, on the security side of that. They're taught how to control the electric.
Right. Yep. And to be able to shut it down remotely means, you're talking about the relays and switches on the power lines too, that can also be compromised.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not just at the power station itself, but this is distributed control now into, devices that may or may not have good security controls in them or may not be protected as well as they should be. So yeah, that's the one that keeps me up at night.
Oh yeah, you just think about water being gone for even a day, or a sewer system. I mean, we talked about this last year, and it's still a very real concern.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it down for an individual, it's an inconvenience. If you take it down for a town or a city, that's something else.
So in our last couple of minutes, Shawn, what are some key things that we can do as individuals to help protect ourselves?
So, this goes back to a lot of the stuff we say on a regular basis. I'll, keep repeating it because it's valid. Passwords, use good, strong passwords. Use a password manager so you're not using the same password on multiple places. Use a passphrase instead of a password. Something long but not necessarily complex. Something that's easy to remember but relates to something that only you would know, that I can't research about you on social media. Make sure your computer is patched and you have current antivirus, that you're installing Windows or Apple updates when they come out, and you're not saying do it later or I'll reboot later. Take the time, do the reboot, install the updates. The manufacturing, Apple and Microsoft and Adobe are pushing those out for a reason, as they discover these vulnerabilities and fix them. So, to be part of the solution means being proactive about your own defense. Keeping your antivirus up to date. I don't care whether you use a free or a paid antivirus, but make sure it's current. Make sure the subscription hasn't expired if it's a new computer you bought that had it on it. A lot of times they are good for a year or a month. It varies. But if you haven't checked on that lately, it's a good time of year to check and make sure you're aware of, when does that thing expire? Because a lot of them will stop receiving updates once the subscription period has expired, if it's a paid product. And as always, if you get emails from people you don't know, or even from people you do know that look odd, that have strange looking attachments that don't make sense, that are out of context, be suspicious.
And and also within that same idea with the email, I got an email from a coworker, and just as I read through it, I just knew this is not how this person talks or writes. And so it was an immediate red flag. And I text messaged him and asked him, did you send this to me?
Yep.
And he quickly responded back with, no, it's not me. And, so.
And that's a great practice. So what you're describing there is an out of band response. You got an email, but you responded to the person with a text message. So if the email is compromised and you send a reply saying, is this you? The attacker's on the other end is going to send you a reply back saying, yeah, it's me. But he doesn't have that person's cell phone or their home phone or whatever other means that you use to communicate with them. So if you get something suspicious, don't respond on that same medium. Or as always, send it here to spam@ap.edu so we can take a look at it and tell you. Because we have the systems here that we can test that stuff to see if it's going to blow up or not.
And we did have a situation here a couple of years ago where the account was compromised. They got, a person got an email, so they instant messaged the person, and the bad actor, as you've been calling them today, was still in the account and responded to the chat message. Yeah, oh yeah, that's for me.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that's why I pick a totally different method to contact them.
And that's the
outside of that account.
And that's the best practice right there.
Well, Shawn, we are out of time. We will be back the beginning of February. I haven't looked to see what the first Wednesday of February, what that date is, but we'll be back. And hopefully we'll have some good news with security.
February is what, Valentine's Day? I'm sure we'll have something related to that.
I'm sure. Excuse me. Again, if you have any questions, you can contact us at iso@apu.edu. You can send all those suspicious looking emails to spam@apu.edu. And until next time, be safe, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, sounds good. Bye-bye.